I wanted to start actually, as I mentioned, by talking to you about sports. And
right.
A lot of people might not know that once upon a time you were a big surfer.
So surfing was my life really when I was junior high and high school. And I had an older buddy who was kind of a pal. He had a car, so we could in Florida what you call drive up coast, because if you live below Palm Beach. The state does this, or well, for your viewing public, it goes like that, right? So northern swells come this way, and they peter out at the point where Palm Beach is. So you have to drive a little north of there, and that's why Cocoa and Fort Pierce and Sebastian Inlet are good breaks, and even Boynton Beach sometimes. And we used to surf off a place called Red Rock in Boca Raton. Even it was pretty good. And I even used to take my little boat there once in a while with my surfboard in it, and I'd just throw the hook and paddle in from outside.
How'd you get into it?
A buddy just said, you want to try this? And I said, sure. So the first month of that is pretty hellish. Just paddling out really knocks you out, basically. And then you kind of get in shape. And I say to everybody, if you can surf every day for 6 months to begin, then you become a surfer. That's all it is. It's like playing the piano. It's like anything else, any other skill you acquire. You just have to keep going and slowly graduate up to bigger waves and stuff like that on the good days. Cocoa used to have some great waves, great breaks, and then I surfed up as high as Matinee, Rhode Island. They had great lefts there, and that was the coldest I've ever been in my life. I was surfing in Narragansett once. I didn't like wetsuits. I clearly turned blue in Rhode Island in the spring.
You made a big time commitment, though, to it as well. I mean, you were surfing
every day for about 7 years.
I
surfed,
right?
Yeah.
What did you enjoy about it?
Oh, just that harmony. Just that oneness with nature, God, all that stuff. You feel it all in those moments. And when it's a great day surfing and you drop into a terrific wave, there's really nothing quite like it. There were moments I thought I sort of just disappeared, like sort of became one with nature and whatever it is, the oversoul, all the corny talk you hear about, kids that live in that world. That's what it was like for me.
What would you think about when you were out there?
Where's the next wave coming from?
Okay.
Pretty much, it would help you to filter out almost everything. And I guess it's sort of like meditation in a strange way, bit by bit the layers of your life drop off and you finally become sort of in tune with the moment, and that's what happens in surfing. I mean, you are completely in tune with the moment, and I guess that's kind of perfection.
And speaking of meditation, there was a period in your life where you used to meditate, I think, a couple hours a day.
It was part of the surfing thing.
Got it.
It was all part of the surfing thing. I'd do some yoga at night before I'd go to bed, and I'd sit and meditate, and that's when I had some extraordinary experiences with that. There was this guy named Richard Hittleman that wrote a book called Hatha Yoga, I think it was called. And I just did the exercises in there and read the book and started to do these meditative things. And so one guy said, just concentrate on the sound inside your ear, which is sort of like the same thing you do with a conch shell, like if you listen, you can hear the ocean. There is a sound you can hear inside your ear that is basically just a movement of molecules of air, moving around and banging off of each other. And you start to get into that, and then it would just sort of slip into a space where you were floating. So it was a good thing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you had what you called your most religious experience out on a surfboard.
Yeah. The one where I sort of stepped off the planet. I thought it was an amazing thing. It was a particularly hot day. I was surfing in Palm Springs. I'm in Palm Beach, and it was a big wind break that day. It was all kicked up by a little storm that was off the coast, and it was choppy and kind of radical, but you could drop into a wave once in a while, and suddenly I hit one. It was fantastic, and I was going left. And I looked up through the wave as it kind of sort of peaked above my head, and I caught the sun through the wave, and I saw it, and then right at that moment I just went like I vanished into this place that was beyond the sun, and I thought I saw angels all around me, and I thought, boy, if this is what dying is, if this is where heaven is, I'm good. This is all an all-powerful, sort of connected moment in my life. So that was the top of the line.
Emotional experience?
Emotional to the point of just peace, of sort of ecstatic. There was an ecstasy about it that was fully natural.
Well, even you talking about it now, I can tell it.
It was really something.
What about the memory? Kind of still touches you?
It's still with me. Yeah, it's just it still sustains. I guess you have all those moments. I'm trying to think now how to relate it to other sport moments. There's just that thing that happens, I think, where it's perfect. The perfect moment when you hit a golf swing. You just happen to get it right that moment. And the guys that do it professionally do it all the time. But there's a point in sort of all physical expression, I guess, where you align with what an ideal is and what the work of that is. And when they connect, it feels perfect.
So speaking about being out on the water, how did you get into sailing?
Sailing, I learned to sail when I was 9 years old in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey, at the Atlantic Highlands Yacht Club. They gave a summer course on boats they called Blue Jays. And I and my good buddy Doug, we're still friends, we see each other all the time, took a sailing class with a fellow named Skip Brennan. And he just instilled us, this is what it is, We learned basic knot tying and how to trim a sail and understand what the dynamics of it were, the physics of it, the Bernoulli principle, all that stuff, because the sail is like a foil. And so that technically the lift of what would be an airplane wing is the same power that pulls a sailboat along. It doesn't really push it along, it pulls it along, which is kind of fascinating. But I fell in love with that then. And one of my big dreams as a kid was to buy a sailboat one day. It didn't happen until I was 29. But
it's not a bad age.
It wasn't so bad. It wasn't so bad. I'd done my first year on Cheers, and I knew this guy that had a boat called a Baltic, a 37-foot sloop, which I could single-hand if I had to. And he said he had to get rid of it because he was getting divorced. So I said, well, you know what? I just finally saved a little bit of money, enough to buy this boat. So I went to Bank of America and I took a dollar-for-dollar loan. So the first time I paid off anything was this sailboat. And that's how I established credit.
Or a crash course in
finance. Exactly, in finance. So I bought this boat that way, and then I had it until 9 years ago. So I had it for about 30 years. And it's a great story. My wife, Kate, I said, you gotta go out on my boat. Because I used to sail twice a week. I used to go out, as soon as rehearsal was over, I'd grab my buddy John and I'd say, let's go out. We'd sail for a few hours and we'd buy some lamb chops, barbecue them on the little sort of marine Weber that you just put up on a stanchion. And it was ideal. It was a wonderful time. And so Kate, I take her down to the boat and I slide open the hatch and I climb down the ladder. I'm standing there by the galley and she says, have you ever had sex on this boat? I just was frozen. I thought, oh, hell. And I wasn't looking at her. I thought, so I raced through about 20 lies I could tell as fast as my brain could function. And I just turned around and said, yes. And she said, well, I'm not going out on it. So I said, how could you? But so I donated the boat.
You donated
to a sailing school. And the boat was actually worth more when I donated it than it was when I bought it originally. So that was actually a real success story. And she says I can buy another sailboat, but we haven't gotten around to that yet.
I was going to say, you not lying in that moment spoiled probably what could have otherwise been an enjoyable experience.
Who knows?
So will you buy another one?
Yeah, I think so. Someday. It'll depend on where we are. I think I'm a warmer waters guy now. California's great, but the ocean's cold. The Pacific's cold around that area, so.
Where all of you sailed around the world?
The Virgin Islands. I was born in the Virgin Islands, so I've gone back there some and sailed a little bit there. Florida a lot, the Bahamas a lot. We used to sail from Lauderdale to Bimini all the time. That was almost a monthly experience, and that's some of my best sails were that sail, like nighttime, moonless nights. Fantastic, that sense of darkness, like the ink of the sea and the ink of the night together, and you just moving through it silently. Fantastic. So semi-religious as well, actually, yeah.
Motorcycles. How did you get into biking?
Motorcycles started when I was 13, I guess, maybe 12. A buddy of mine had a little Honda 90, and we rode it around my neighborhood. You know, we had there was a field across the street from my neighborhood that was from our house that we would make little trails through, and run into a tree once in a while. So that's how we learned. We got scuffed up, and I always said to all my friends, I said, you don't get into anything without getting scuffed up a little bit. So try to put yourself in a position where you're in the least amount of danger, but likely to have a few falls, and because motorcycles are dangerous, and people who tell you they aren't are lying to you. And so then it graduated to street bikes. And that was actually sort of the birth of the big super bikes that started right around then in the early 70s. There was the Kawasaki 500, which was, all of a sudden nobody thought anything could be that fast. And it's just, you'd get on it and you'd start sliding off the back of the bike. And then the Honda 750 came out, which was like the first real beautiful, loud, fantastic sounding bike that was not a Harley. Harleys were always kind of big and cool, but they weren't designed to go super fast like the Japanese bikes were. And that Honda 750, boy, you could hear it coming from like 10 miles away. People would say, whoa, there's one. And so I had one of those.
And you biked cross country on many occasions. How about best memory?
Three times I crossed the country on a motorcycle. There are varied experiences on each of the crossings, but the most sort of pivotal one was the first one, which was to go get a job. My first acting job was in San Diego, California. I got the job in New York. My motorcycle was in Florida. So I called my grandmother and said, I have good news. And she said, what, you finally got a job? I said, yes. And I said, I have to drive my motorcycle there. I don't have the money to get on a plane. I think it was $29 then to get on I think it was run by Eastern, what they called the Yellow Bird. Was a 727, and it was a cheap flight one way to Lauderdale. So I went over to LaGuardia, got on the plane. My grandmother said, okay, I'll buy you the ticket. So I got there. I had 50 bucks in my pocket. I got a new chain for my motorcycle and tuned it up and got on it the next day. Drove to Tallahassee, Florida, met with a buddy of mine in Tallahassee, which is a big drive from Lauderdale. It's like, 300, maybe 400 miles. And we had dinner that night. We hung out. I started my journey across country. I made Houston the next day. That was a pretty big drive. Got hit by lightning halfway there.
I was going to say, tell about getting struck by lightning.
This is the lightning story, yeah. So, if you're driving long distance on a motorcycle, you're going to get wet. And that's just sort of what happens. And, it's a bit of an idiot Yahoo, still almost a teenager. And so I just knew, I'm driving into a thunderstorm, and I said, I got to make Houston anyway, so I got to keep going. And I don't really have a set of, wet gear and all that stuff that some of the guys have now. So it gets pretty intense. I'm getting beat up a little bit. I'm doing still 80 miles an hour, in a pouring thunderstorm. So you're really getting pummeled. And then I felt a jolt through my system and thought, holy that must have been like lightning. Had to be. And I thought, well, but I'm grounded, because I got my rubber, the rubber of the tires grounded me, so I'm safe. I realized that I probably just conducted a lightning bolt. So, but I took it as a good sign, as it was an omen that I was starting a new life. Like sometimes sort of a purifying moment of like, that part of you is gone now. Oh, and sir, this happens as well. It was the furthest west I'd ever been at that time in my life. I'd never been off the East Coast.
Wow.
And so I was in Alabama. And that's where it happened. So
I want to wrap up the sports section with this. I hear you had quite the little moment as a sixth grade football player.
Oh, God, yeah, I told this story. What's his name? Hell, I'm forgetting it right now. Big sports guy.
Rich Eisen.
Yeah, Rich, yeah. So I was on Rich's show, yeah. This was the only time my granddad, who raised me, and I loved him, I adored him. And he died when I was 12, so there wasn't much time with him. Gordon came to Rumson Country Day School, the Rumson football team. And, we're tiny. But my buddy Doug was there too. We went to school together there. It's a goal line stance. I was playing left tackle, both sides, offense and defense. And one of the kids turns to me just as it's their last play, basically. It's toward the end of the game. And my grandfather's over there watching. And I think his name was Chris. He says to me, "Look out for the draw play." And I thought, what the hell's the draw play? But I took it to mean I should just look up and not bite right away. So I did a little pop thing and then looked, and here comes this kid with a football in his hand. I thought, I got him. So I tackled him, dropped him there, and they didn't score a touchdown. And so I did my goal line stance, and that was my granddad. I was very pleased with it.
Oh, that had to be so cool.
It was actually really cool.
Well, did he say anything to you after?
He said, "Nice tackle."
So, no.
I was a big kid then. As I got older, the swings changed. I was the biggest kid on my block until I was 12 years old, and then it started to shift a little bit. Of course, my sister was always bigger than I was until I was 14, but that's how it is for boys.
What do you remember from reading your first Shakespeare play in 7th grade?
Right, well, that was after Gordon died, and so I was pretty emotional about what was going on in my life then. It was right after, and then this play called Julius Caesar was the first one we read in 7th grade, and there was this character, Brutus, who was philosophically unmoved by emotion, who thought Stoicism was the right way to go. You make decisions based upon facts, and you don't let your emotions carry you away. I thought that was a great philosophy, and it crafted what I started to do after that, because I could have kind of fallen apart because I really relied on my granddad, and then I thought I'm the only guy left of the family. I have to be strong for the women in the household, my grandmother, mother, and sister. And so I tried to just be a strong man. And it changed my focus on a lot of things, about how to take things in stride and how not to take too much focus on, or put too much focus on the things that blow us about, the bad things that happen. Try to keep them in perspective a little bit and not allow them to change you or turn you into an idiot. And so I tried. I've been a bit of an idiot sometimes in my life, but anyway.
Well, I think we all have it as well, but I told you this off camera. Your book that you wrote many years back so far was great, and you were so open, and you talked about being there for your mom, sister,
right,
and grandma,
yeah.
which just seemed like a Herculean undertaking. And, you mentioned like reading Shakespeare for the first time, 7th grade. What was it about getting kicked out of Juilliard and what your teacher said to you that really reinforced reading those works as something of importance?
Right. When I was thrown out of Juilliard, which was, I was 20? Yeah, I think I was 20 years old. And he said, "Is there anything you'd like me, is there anything you want to ask me?" I said, "Well, yeah, what do I do from here? What's the best thing?" He said, "Well, you know," and this was John Houseman at the time, who was kind of a famous professor at that time. He said, "Read the great novels." Because if you do that and you dedicate yourself to that, you get information that becomes part of you. If you dive into a novel, like one of the great novels, you actually kind of live through those moments with those people. So suddenly you're living through, like in War and Peace, the war with Napoleon, and suddenly you're one of those guys, and you have all this information about what it's like, and you'd never have that anywhere else, not in your own life experience. And the best equipment you have to be a good actor is that you have human experience at your fingertips. And so the more you can gather, the more you can harvest from great storytelling, the more you can filter into what your career hopefully will be.
You once produced and hosted a Jack Benny tribute.
Yes.
What was it about what the legendary actor said on Johnny Carson that really stuck with you?
I was 17, and I was acting at that time. I finally had become an actor. You know, I was at least interested in it. And Johnny Carson asked Jack Benny what his key to success was. And Jack said, I always play up to the audience. I always play up to my audience. And I thought, boy, that's exactly right. Never assume an audience is dumber than you are, or that they're stupid, or they won't get it. Always play up to them. Always think that they will know. And if you trust that, they always do. I mean, audiences are always miles ahead of us. You know, they always know everything. People are much smarter than we give them credit for. I love people, and I love their brains, and I think they're all smart, and I think everybody gets it. And so that became sort of the rallying point for me in terms of the way I wanted to do work. I always thought, never wait for the audience, never play down to the audience, never think they're not going to be with you. Always assume they'll be ahead of you. And that changed everything I did.
Well, it's interesting you say that too, because your Frasier executive producer, one of the skills of yours that he commended was along those lines. How do you get to the point where you can walk into a room performing, not say anything, not move, be staring at the audience, and for the audience to be laughing with you because they know exactly what you're thinking?
I think that comes from actually understanding that we all have an intellect that connects us, you know, and once they recognize the character, once they know the situation enough, they'll respond to a look or a raised eyebrow or anything like that. Yeah, I mean that's one of the heady moments when you realize, you know, you're in the pocket, that things are going well.
What does that feel like?
It just feels it's a little bit like heaven.
Really?
I mean, you know, because you're just connected to other human beings, and I think that a great deal of what we're here for is to make that connection. You know, is to live with other human beings, to elevate your experience based upon the connection you make with other people, and that is one of the greatest.
You said before, quote, acting gives you a great opportunity to express yourself honestly without being accountable for it.
Yeah,
how
right.
so?
Well, that's the mask of acting. You know, it's like you don't have to get blamed for everything you say. I mean, you get to tell truth, but you don't have to actually take the hit for it, because everybody goes, oh, well, he's, you know, that's acting. that's all that means.
You learn your lines, so apparently only moments before you go out.
In certain circumstances, I do. In television, for instance, if you have been playing a part for a long time, which arguably Frasier was a good distance, a good amount of time.
Not just a good amount of time,
yeah,
one of the
20
longest
years.
amount of times.
Yeah, so it was pretty
right?
good. I was thinking about that. I think the guy on NCIS now probably has it beat. I think they've been on forever. It's like since before The Simpsons, practically. But if you have that, then you have to kind of come up with ways to stay fresh or unpredictable. I'm trying to think of spontaneous. And so for me, it was like an exercise. I don't want to learn my lines. I sort of know what I'm going to do, and I'll learn them just before I go on, so that it looks like I'm looking for the words, which is what we really do anyway. And so it was an affectation, really. It was like a trick that helped me to stay fresh, to look real.
So you went to Juilliard on scholarship, yet you still had to take 2 jobs to daily, I think, to make ends meet.
Yeah. Well, what I did was the summer before I took 2 jobs, so that I'd have enough cash to kind of get through the year. And that was when I was a night man at a hotel, and I worked on a construction site in the daytime. And I actually used to run from one to the other. After the job would close at 6 a.m., at the hotel, I would run over and start work on the construction site.
What were the hours?
That was 7 to 3, basically, and then it was 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. on the, and I would do the laundry a lot of the time on the hotel one, and rake the beach, brush the tennis courts, clean the tile in the swimming pool, you know, just stuff like that. I liked work.
How much money?
I ended up with $700 by the end of the summer, and it got me through. It got me through till the spring the next year.
Well, I mean, yes, but you had to be creative.
Very
what
creative.
led you to sleeping in the park?
Well, that was because it was still warm enough I could actually sleep there for just only a few weeks, really. But I could sneak behind a certain bush and cover myself with a newspaper, and I was fine. And I showered over at Juilliard.
What do you remember from that? I mean,
Nothing. No, it's
you were
completely safe.
sleeping in the park, though.
It was completely
same way?
safe.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'd been camping when I was a kid.
I mean, that's a
It
little
wasn't
different.
really much
though.
different than that. Well, it really
Yeah, I mean,
wasn't. You
people
know,
don't camp in the
nobody
park
was really
in
around.
New York
You didn't
City.
see anybody, so it was all right. You know, I never had any real experiences there. I had to, you know, one time I took the train too far on the Independent line. I ended up in Harlem, and some guy looked at me. It was like 3 a.m. I'm standing there on one side of the track, and he looks over like this. He goes, "Hope you make it home." You know, I thought, oh hell! But you know what? Whatever it was, there was always something that kept me safe.
What do you think going through that period, though, taught you about money and savings?
Well, it taught me to be pretty frugal, you know, and I'm a bit of a spendthrift. If in my heart, I think that you should live beyond your means a little bit. You should take risks, like build a brewery. You know, money's made to be spent a little bit. You're supposed to actually be in the game, you know, put it to good work, to good use, but you also should be smart about how far you overextend. You know, I mean, everybody overextends a little bit, but yeah, I try to keep it within reason.
How did you figure out that balance early on, though? When
Well,
when
early on it was simpler because you just didn't, you just knew you couldn't do that, you know. So, and I was always willing to sacrifice my body for the sake of survival, which meant, I'll sleep in the elements. I won't get an apartment.
Right.
I'll drive a motorcycle instead of get a car, stuff like that. There was always a way of shaving the budget to a point where you could survive and still feel like you were, thriving. Because I always felt rich. I always felt like I was doing great. I mean, if I could buy a quarter pound of salami and a hard roll, I was a happy guy.
So there was a period in which, during your early acting days, where you auditioned something like 100 times over 4 months.
100 auditions, yeah.
And what made you realize that if you really wanted to be an actor, you had to give up the waiting job?
Oh, that was interesting. No, I'd had some success in acting by then. I mean, at least I'd had a couple of jobs. I worked in San Diego for almost 2.5 years, 3 seasons. 3 summer seasons, and I stayed through the winter and did some shows then. I ended up doing maybe 13 plays during that amount of time, which was, just great. And I went back to New York and did a job did a job off Broadway for, what was subway fare. That was one of the big things we'd get, which was 75 cents at the time. And did a couple of other plays like readings and stuff like that. And then I one day walked into work where I was working at O'Neill's on 57th Street and 6th Avenue, and which is now the Rue to something or other. It's still there. The restaurant's still there. And I suddenly thought, you know what? You're not going to be an actor as long as you're a waiter. And that's when I said to the guy, I said, I got to quit. I don't know why. It's just time. And his name was Michael, I remember. He was a nice guy. And he said, well, okay. It sounds crazy to me, but okay. And I got a job the next day. And I was an actor ever since.
Well, the rest is history. Christopher Plummer, the Wednesday matinee
Yeah, very
play.
challenging, very challenging.
What did you say and what did you do?
Well, this is...
It's a good story.
It's a fun story. I really like Chris. So
And
it's
you
like
called it
it took us a while. Football
acting.
acting, because Chris would just throw you around if you couldn't keep up with him, he'd throw you around. And more power to him. I celebrate him now because I was at a point in my life when I thought, boy, maybe this isn't for me, and maybe that was partially working with Chris. I don't know, but I'd finally gotten fed up. I'd realized that I broke my foot several months previous because I had ended up too far stage left. I didn't get to my light. Chris had pulled me around really hard and I broke my foot. And I thought, and I heard a crack, I thought, what the hell is that? So the same set of circumstances occurred on this particular matinee day, and I suddenly, like, all this rage came up in me, and I grabbed a hold of him and I threw him as hard as I could. Sort of ended up off stage, and I did whisper something in his ear that wasn't particularly pleasant.
We can believe it.
Well, I just you and tossed him.
And like really tossed him.
Oh, I really tossed him, yeah. And then he came storming back out on stage, and and just gave me that look, and I thought, well, this is it. I'm fired now. This is fine. And but what was weird was from that time on, we had the best time. It was just he just needed to know he wasn't going to, get away with the stuff he usually got away with anymore. And it turned out to be a great experience. So in the end, I credit him with a lot. He prepared me for, other actors can be challenging. Other actors will, run you right over. And some of them are in that, some of them don't. Some of them don't really deserve to, be given the credit for it. But he's talented enough to he actually had earned it. You just had to stand up to it.
Christian Slater's mom's responsible for getting you one of your early soap opera gigs.
Mary Jo Slater became a pal. I arrived from San Diego with my girlfriend then, Ellen, who was doing. She had an audition for One Life to Live, and I just came along with her, and. Drove her nuts because so Slater's sitting there, and I walk in with Ellen. She checks in, says, Ellen Toby, blah, 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 blah. And I said, I remember, Mary Jo just looked up and looked at me and said, who are you? I could just see Ellen going like, and she said, you're cute. It was nice. I was cute then. I'm not sure that's the case anymore, but so she said, why don't you sit down? Give me a minute. I'm going to take. So she took a couple of girls in and did their auditions, and I was sat there for about maybe 45 minutes, and she said, come on in. So she walked me in. She said, you're an actor. I said, yeah. And she said, do you have an agent? I said, no, I just got to town. She said, do you want one? Sure. So she got on the phone and called Jeff Hunter, who was a big agent, and I'm sending over a kid. We're going to test him for this role, blah, 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 and you should sign him.
And that's a big deal. That's
was
stuff
huge.
that does not typically happen.
Extraordinary. No, I did not end up getting that part, but I did test for it, and that was pretty cool.
And you got a babysitting gig of the young Christian Slater.
I used to babysit for Christian. Yeah. Slater and I became friends. I called her Slater always. We still connect once in a while. Great gal. And so Christian, was, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, whatever. I know I helped out at his birthday parties, stuff like that.
So take me through the meeting you had with George Lucas.
The George Lucas thing was pretty funny because there's a great backstory to it. This was the day I got kicked out of Juilliard. There was one of the teachers there, Edith Skinner was her name. She basically created the speech for the American theater. An extraordinary person. And she walked up to me and she said, Kelsey, I know you've had trouble. And she said, you have Caruso equipment, and I think you'll have a great future. So I thought, oh, well, that's great. She said, I think you should meet this man, this agent. Mort Schwartz was his name. And so she gave me the number. I called and said, yeah, come on over. So I walk over to this place. This was a couple of days after I'd been kicked out, and this is why he had a Dutch door. There was a secretary here, who sort of was fighting, and Mort was in the back in his office, and the top part was open, and he's going, listen, Greg, I'll get back to you. And blah blah blah. And he calls. He goes, and he looks at me. He goes, it's Gregory Peck. And he says, who are you? And I said, Kelsey Grammer. Edith Skinner told me to come over. He says, oh yeah, okay, come on in. She says, then he looks at me. He goes, yeah, okay. What happened at school? He said, I said, well, I got kicked out. So why do you think that happened? I said, well, I wasn't going to acting class, so which was the case. So he looked at me for a second. He said, you know what? He takes out a pencil, a piece of paper on a pad, writes out this thing, go to this address. There's a guy there casting a movie about space. And he hands me the thing. It's about 3 blocks away. I walk around, I knock on the door, and sure enough, they call me in, and I sit down, and there's, I didn't know at the time, George Lucas. And he says, well, we're making this thing about, it's a fairy tale in space. 2 guys rescue a princess. Great, sounds like fun. So he said, you're right there's these 2 parts. Well, maybe the older guy, you look a little older than, he's kind of a, gunslinging kind of guy, an adventurer. Cool, great, yeah, sounds good to me. Well, I never heard back from him or anything, but about a year and a half later, I was doing a job in San Diego. I got my first job, I was in San Diego, then I went and saw this movie where then the ship goes over your head, and then you see the jet or the engines, and I'm watching it a little bit longer, and I'm thinking, holy this is that movie. This is that thing the guy told me about. It's them. It's oh my God. So, well, I either dodged a bullet or missed a really big opportunity. So, but you know what? Harrison Ford did really well in that.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan, so.
Oh, and the big opportunity was coming up. You auditioned for Cheers. The audition ends, no one laughs. What are you thinking?
Yeah, that was a strange experience, because I ended up at the end of the audition in California. There's a room full of people, not one laugh. And so I put the script down and I said, you know what, I'm gonna go out on the street, see if I can get some laughs out there. And I turned around and I left. And I called my old pal Lois and said, let's go take a drive. Let's go down to San Diego, because I'd known her from San Diego. We went and spent the weekend. And I got back on Monday to collect my things and then head off to the airport. And as I walked into the old Holiday Inn there that was at Hollywood and Vine, where I think the big theater is now, the Kodak Theater, whatever it's called now. They said, there's some messages for you, and people have been trying to get a hold of you all this time. And I walked into my little hotel room, there was a bottle of Dom Perignon sitting on the table. I went and opened it up, and it said, welcome to Cheers. So.
How cool was that?
It was really cool.
Describe the emotion of driving up to the Paramount lot for the first time.
The first time I drove into Paramount was great. I mean, I said, it's Kelsey Grammer. I said, oh, yeah, hey, good to see you. Yeah, come on in, here's your parking space, blah, 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 blah. That was very cool. Because the gates, Hollywood still, it has a sort of, mythology about it. It's kind of a size about it that makes it really cool to kind of, finally walk through one of those gates and be welcomed. That was a nice thing.
And Cheers, obviously one of the most successful shows in TV history. Frasier, the spin-off, one of the most successful spin-offs in television history. You actually end up directing more than 30 episodes of Frasier yourself, but the show centered around an older father and kind of a misunderstood relationship with his grown son. Correct me if I'm wrong, you said the greatest gift you got from Frasier was understanding what it was like to have a father and brother.
A relationship with a father. Yeah.
How so?
Well, my granddad had really sort of taken the place of my father. I didn't know my dad very well. My dad died when I was 14, just a couple years after Gordon, but I didn't really even know him. After Gordon died, my dad sent a note and said, listen, why don't you come and visit me? Come and say hi. So I got to know him a little bit. Spent about 3 weeks in St. Thomas with my sister, and we got to know my dad a little bit. And then saw him one more time after that, and he was dead. So that was a strange experience. So I never really had a dad, and I had no real sort of understanding of how to be a dad myself either, which has come into play in my life since then. But what I got with John and with David Hyde Pierce, John Mahoney playing my dad, was by virtue of the time we spent together, the 11 years we spent together, I got an understanding of what it might be like to have had a father. And that was a great, great thing. And to have had a brother, that went through the things we go through, in life together, and the rivalries and the love and the commitment and the loyalty, and I mean things that were, we were playing characters in a world where they were virtuous people. They were, they had pitfalls and flaws, but they were basically virtuous, and that was so. It's a slightly idealized version of what a father and a son and a brother might experience together, but I think it's actually a pretty good slice of what would be right in life.
How true is it that at times it would take you days to get through family scenes without breaking down yourself?
Oh, it still happens to me. I cry all the time, cry at the drop of a hat. I don't know why.
About what in those situations?
I don't know, it just has something that reminds me of the beauty of being a human being, the beauty of experience, the beauty of love, the beauty of family, things that are poignant and would bring a tear to your eye anyway. I'm always there, I take the ride along with the character, and so I'll bubble up and say, oh my God.
Yeah. In what ways did you feel like, you said this, that your TV father on Frasier was almost like a father figure to you?
Yeah, my TV dad was just a remarkable guy, a guy of sacrifice and service and loyalty, again, like the virtues, the basic virtues of what you'd look for in a man, in the traditional sense of a good man, one that's honest, true, loyal, noble, keeps his word, stuff like that. And the caring between the three men on that show was, there was an honest, sort of uncovered connection that is possible between men that we don't talk about a lot. With a lot of villainizing about being, what they call toxic masculinity. I don't know. I don't know if that's even a thing. I mean, because the men I know are good people, and the women I know are good people. So, we're always bound to have some difficulties, but this blaming each other for toxicity is just a little bit weird.
What do you think you learned from your grandpa growing up?
Gordon was a good man. He was a good man. He was a man of service, the same kind of thing. He was a military guy, reluctantly a military guy. I mean, he was a retired colonel, but I mean, he served in World War II. He was in Guadalcanal for, more than a couple of years, and he put his money where his mouth was, and he was fair and honest with people, and believes that you should be. He thought that lying was not, a good path. But I think in some ways he thought you didn't always have to tell people the bald-faced truth about things or what you felt about them personally. It wasn't necessary. You do as little damage as you can. And Gordon told me one great expression that it took me years to decipher. When I was 11, we were taking a walk. I was going through some hard times at this 5th grade school that I was in. And he said, Kels, if you see a bug, step on it or walk around it. Oh boy, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
And then through the years, I started to understand that you will run into situations that bug you, or a person that bugs you, that can get on your nerves. And dealing with it rarely means needing to step on it, or cut it, or somehow, or really, really confront it. Most of the time, you can just walk around it. And so very few bugs really rate your attention, and the ones that do, you should just get over with quick.
As you mentioned, he passed away when you were 12 years old of cancer. I think unbeknownst to you, it had spread all
we
over
had no
his
idea,
body. And even if it's untrue, you had the realization at the time that you would always be alone. Why did you feel that way then?
The boy, Kelsey, talking about myself in the third person, I hadn't really let the impact of losing him touch me for about 6 weeks. And then that one night, I just sensed that I was always going to be alone, that people would always leave, that it wasn't going to be an easy thing, life. And that was a remarkably desolate moment in my life. Sad, sort of abandoned. And it energized me in a strange way to think that at the end of that particular realization that I would be okay anyway, that I was going to survive. But that was That was a hard night. That's the first time I cried over my granddad.
What do you remember from the 3 weeks you spent with your dad in St. Thomas after the grandpa's
playing the
passing?
drums. You know, I played the drums with this band. My dad was a music teacher, who had he played the bugle in the army, and I'm told he played taps at Arlington. But he had this band with 4 or 5 other guys, and the night that I went to listen to band practice, the drummer was not there. So he asked me to do the drums for 12 bells at midnight. So I was counting, and I knew enough about measures and music, so I could count it out. And after I hit the 12th one, he said, "You're the first guy who ever did that right." So that was a big thing. We woke up one night in the middle of the night, and he threw together some tacos out of the fridge. And that was a great moment. We just sat and ate together. And he asked me to edit his magazine. He also published a magazine. He asked me to proofread a few of the articles when I was there.
And it's a controversial magazine too, or
Virgin Island View. Yeah, he was a controversial guy. He called things as he saw them. My grandmother used to tell the story of the day I was born. She flew down, and she said from the airport to the hospital, he got in 3 fistfights. So he was a sort of a bigger than life guy. We flew into Puerto Rico, and the stewardess took us, to a little holding room near the luggage place, and they said, "Who's picking you up? Your kids. You can't just be released into San Juan." So I said, "Well, he looks like Blackbeard the pirate." That's all I really knew. And,
it had been years since you'd seen him.
I had no recollection of him. And but my mom said he looks like Blackbeard the pirate, so I quoted that, and they sort of laughed. And then down at the end of this hangar, with the end of the airport, which looked like an old hangar, I don't know what it is now, there's this giant guy standing there, and with a big black beard. And he weighed about 350 at the time. And I thought, holy crap, that's my dad. He's right there. And I said, I think it's him. And they all turned and sort of giggled. He looked just like Blackbeard the pirate. So he used to play it in the carnival every year on the island. So.
And you've been very open about this. He was murdered.
Yeah.
Why was it not till you turned the age that he passed that it really sunk in for you?
I had a pretty tempestuous relationship at the time, and on one particular night, things got pretty dramatic, and so I'm not going to say anything else about it except that a certain event took place on that particular night with this particular woman in my life that made me think, holy crap, my dad was so young when he died, because I was 38, and it was the first time it hit me how young he was to have died at that age. Because to me, it was such a sort of a distant memory. I was 14, and 38 seemed like a lot then to me, at that time. But in getting to that space, I suddenly thought, what a loss for him. The people that have died in my life, and there have been a few. It always seems to me like it's their tragedy. It's not really mine. It's that loss of what he might have done with his own life, of possibly the relationship we could have had, but that really wasn't what it was about. It was about this poor young man that was taken before his time.
Your sister similarly murdered. You said it took kind of 20 years for you to overcome or get to a place so it wouldn't hurt you anymore. How so?
What happens when you're grieving and you don't really have any place to put it is you tend to take it out on yourself. And so I did that a bit. I drank excessively, and I got sort of wrapped up in cocaine for a while, and didn't forgive myself. Really what it came down to. And finally, I had a sort of an epiphany of thinking, you're carrying this as though you had something to do with it, and you got to let that go. And I think it's a natural inclination. I think it's certainly a big brother always wants to protect his sister, and that's just what we're trained to do, It's what we're supposed to do. It's what I always did for her when we were kids. So losing her in that way was really damning to me. And I responded in any number of ways for a while. I mean, I used to walk the streets of Manhattan just hoping somebody would like try to do something.
In dangerous parts of the street.
Dangerous parts of the town. And what was weird was, you know, I'd be approaching a situation, a few guys standing around in a corner somewhere or something in the middle of the night, and think, here's a chance, you know. And they all usually just steered clear.
And here's a chance for what?
You know, maybe just I was going to be able to take something out on somebody, or let some of these guys jump me or something. You know, I was not in a good way at that time. But I think in a weird way, everybody kind of sensed it, thought, he's not worth it. So, you know, so maybe I was just being protected, you know. But then that turned into, suddenly I had like great success, things like that. And it just was an irony for me that, you know, that she was gone and taken in such a horrible way, and that I was alive. And so I blamed myself for a long time. And then finally somebody said to me that, you know, usually the reason for addiction and things of that nature is in a profound way is a unresolved grief. I think there's a lot of truth to that statement. If you can just forgive yourself for whatever it is you're in, you don't actually need to carry all that crap anymore. So for me, it really helped me out.
How did you get to the place where you were able to do it?
You know, when it turned off, it just turned off. It was just, whew. And, you know, it doesn't mean now that I don't recollect Karen and or even my dad, and not still, you know, have a profound sense of grief and even cry still. But that part of it has been, the charge has been removed from it.
And you were there when your grandma told your mom what happened?
Yeah.
How did you help your mom in getting through it?
It was hard. You know, helping my mom was tough. I think I'd never seen anybody move around a room that way when she heard her daughter was gone. And I think my mom was a truly brave, you know, wonderful, persevering example. You know, she kept it together and got through it, but always, you know, always mourned the loss of her daughter, her little girl, you know.
The boys that did it were 16, 17, 19 years old.
18, 19, 20. They were in the Army, honestly, but, you know, one guy was pretty creepy. He just died, actually.
I was going to say one's dead, another's up for parole, 2021.
The last of them is alive, yeah.
How do you view them?
As people who should stay in jail. You know, they were given the death penalty, actually, but then I guess in the 80s, was it, or maybe it was in the late 70s, the Supreme Court overturned all death sentences in America and commuted them basically to re-examine, have all the states re-examine their death penalty policy, right? I mean, I don't know exactly what the legal language is that best describes it, but so they were commuted to life sentences, all of them. And then because they fell into that little niche, it gave them the right to go up for parole all the time. So they've been, since Colorado has altered its law to say when life means life. If you're in jail for life, you're in jail for life. There's no parole. And that certainly would have been easier on me, but you know, the last decade has been spent going back to Colorado Springs to ask the parole board to keep them in jail.
What do you have to do?
Basically write a statement, show up, you know, speak to them about them. The last of them is the guy that was pretty instrumental in killing my sister, and I just, you know, there's a part of me that wants to be as kind to every human being as I possibly can. And but the notion of his ever going free just seems absurd. You know, they didn't kill just one person; they did it to several, and we don't have that right. I mean, except in wartime, maybe, but you know, that's still, you know, that still usually haunts people of conscience anyway.
If they had accepted responsibility and admitted wrongdoing, to what extent do you think that would have changed your view?
Well, I think now they probably have, but it's just.
I mean, for the longest time, they
didn't really. Yeah, no, that's. it's to their credit, but still, you know, I didn't get a chance to meet my nieces and nephews, did I? I didn't get to see her grow up. So.
How do you view therapy?
Through a jaundiced eye. That's the best I can say. I think therapy's fine to a point. I think it's good therapy. You should get over it. You know, you should get through it and say, somebody should finally say, yeah, I think we've done enough here. You're welcome to go out back into the world and move on. You know, get on with your life. In the old days, you know, you'd talk to an English person and say, therapy? Therapist? Isn't that what friends are for? You know, and you'd think, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, you gotta have people you can touchstones in your life where you can talk things through. I certainly did do some therapy in time, and I think it was helpful to a point.
But how's it helpful in your opinion?
You just sit and talk with a neutral party. You know, you're not gonna get in trouble for what you say. Hopefully,
yeah, right.
You know. But I think it's nice to have that outlet for ideas, but once you learn through a certain series of coping mechanisms or whatever how to reflect on things and not take it always so personally, that's certainly a skill you should be able to like master yourself. You know.
So just talking about like personality, for a long time, you said you felt like you were always letting people down. Why?
From time to time, what happens in a relationship with people is they start to have expectations of you that maybe are unrealistic. And I know that I've spent time in relationships where I thought, why am I not good enough? Why is this not working out so well? Why am I suddenly being told I didn't do my job today? That sort of thing has happened to me in the past. And when I realized that I probably was okay, and maybe the issue was that they didn't want me to be okay. You know, I'm not really sure.
And even dating back to when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, I actually thought that I was letting people down, that I thought I just wasn't quite good enough. It didn't quite hit the mark a lot of the time. And maybe that was just out of a feeling that I had to be perfect, that maybe we all have that a little bit. I was letting myself down sometimes. I started to develop certain sort of small goals. I used to tell some of my friends, I said, well, set a goal for yourself that's realistic that day, and do it. You know, make sure you get that one done, because then you won't have a sort of a tradition of feeling like, I didn't do this today, I didn't do that today. Make them small. I'm gonna play in a window box today. So make sure you do it. Simple things, and I think that helps you kind of get a sense of self-respect.
And if something wasn't your fault, you said you had a way of making it your fault?
Making it my fault, yeah, right. Making it of sort of engineering some sort of a bizarre way into thinking, somehow I'm responsible for that. Yeah, no, those are problems of a man that I am no longer that man.
It took a while though to figure
to filter that out. It doesn't feel particularly significant anymore. I think maybe that was coming out of a place where maybe the period that I expressed that was more rich with that particular emotion because of what was going on around me.
Yeah.
And that's over now.
You said you were attracted to threshold experiences, insanity,
I'm still attracted to that.
Man.
I think I find people fascinating who are in that, state. Because that state's an ecstatic state, and one that's even if it's perilous or bad for somebody, it's still attractive in a weird way. So yeah, sometimes I found people who were in sort of crisis more attractive than I would someone who was doing okay.
Tell about I'm shocked that you were open about the tattoo that you got.
For Kate. Oh no. Well, that's just. She said, this is something we actually have we both joke about. She just one time we were sitting there and she said, would you ever, put my name on your body like this, a tattoo? I said, yeah, sure. Why not? So we both said it should be out of sight, so it's somewhere near, it crossed our minds. It'd be funny to sort of say if I happened to be cheating, someone would say, property of. but also, or it could be, with compliments. Your hostess this evening. Courtesy of Kate.
All right, so married 4 times. What do you think you learned from past relationships that's helped you as you've grown as a person?
In terms of I like to think of that married 3 times basically, was once, because that was the same person in different bodies. There was a pattern that I fell into where people that somehow I thought I could help their life be better, help them come to another place somehow, and I realized it wasn't my business. And when I finally stopped doing that, and realized that people had to just love me for who I was, and maybe be a partner, and maybe even like me. That's where some of that other stuff came in.
What was that person that you were attracted to?
I think some of it had to do with always picking people that you could never satisfy. Maybe that's some of what I was talking about before. In terms of Kate's the most mature person I've ever been with. She happens to be younger than anybody else I've ever been with in terms of a fully committed relationship. But the others were part of the step. But there were 3 women that were very similar, and the issue was the same issue. And
abusive
I like to think
too, right?
Well, one certainly very abusive, but I like to think of the lesson being. I finally realized that wasn't what I wanted. It just took me 3 times to figure it out.
Why, when you were in the abuse, did you tolerate it?
That's an interesting question.
And this is
those people who are abused. I was physically abused in my second
black
marriage.
Eye,
Yeah, right.
glass
Black
broken
eyes
on
and
you,
glass broken,
gun fired
all kinds
at
of
you,
stuff. Yeah.
life threatened.
Crazy stuff. Once it happens, apparently some sort of this is a kind of a syndrome, I guess, or something that's identifiable with people who've been abused. You just kind of assume it's your fault, and that you accept it, and that you'll be able to fix it next time. And you just can't. It takes a while to figure that out, though. It takes a while to say, this is not my fault. I'm not responsible for this behavior. That person's responsible for it, and I got to get out of here. That takes a while.
And not speaking to any relationships specifically, but when was a point for you that it just clicked that, this is not for me?
I've had some good days on this. My previous marriage, and honestly, I don't really talk about her very much because, so much of her life is spent talking about me. I just think it's sort of pathetic. And but I will acknowledge one day after I'd had my heart attack. A month after I had a heart attack, my mother died, and it's 12 years ago now. And the day of my mother's funeral, my previous, my third wife, basically had an explosion about something, and started to tell me, I'm out of this, I'm out of here. Again, I want a divorce, blah, 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 blah. Which we'd had the same conversation for, 8 years. And it was tiresome. And I realized at that moment that I was done with her, I was not going to end up in this relationship for much longer. And so somewhere under a year I was done. So.
Kate, who you love dearly, your current wife, 25 years your junior.
My junior, yes. 26, actually.
26. What's, just from an age perspective, the biggest difference you've noticed in
the only thing that I would notice actually is just maybe a little bit more perspective. But Kate's a wise girl. She's a knowledgeable person. She's self-aware. She's a whole human who was willing to, like, one of my favorite expressions about marriage, to lay her solitude beside my own. And so we are 2 individuals who have become a third identity. We've assumed another identity together, which is us together. And that's a very cool thing. And she's a complete human being. And beautiful in all the, humorous, funny, challenging. She's got a really good brain and is quite comfortable using it, and she just has a great way of looking at the world. I mean, she's so entertaining and so fun with the children as well. I mean, she loves kids and loves our family. And I mean, when we were together, you know, when we first got together, she said to me, there was just suddenly a moment where she thought, "Oh my God, I want to have kids with you." And that she said it sort of surprised her, but she said her grandmother had told her years before that she said, "You'll know the man you want to marry when you realize you want to have children with him." And I thought, "Oh wow!" So that was really cool. And I'd had visions of more children in my life anyway. And other than that, other than the fact that I don't run as fast as I used to, I don't feel any age difference between us. There's the sort of empirical, oh yeah, this number is this number, that number is that number, that you just can't ignore sometimes. And there's a certain kind of inevitability about the fact that, well, this one means this and this, and
sure,
there are certain circumstances or consequences of us being together that we'll have to face at some point. But as it stands now, I feel like we are equals and really well matched.
How many kids do you have?
We have 3. I have 7. But we're talking about a couple more.
Really?
Yeah. I love
that is a whole lot of kids.
That's a good chunk of kids.
Why more?
Because it's an uplifting experience. It's a joyous experience for me. These new human beings that come into your life, these children that are your charge, you know, in many ways, but they're also your tutors. You know, they teach you so much about life, remind you so much about life. The simple beauty of life all the time is evident in watching your children grow up. And so the closer I am to that, the happier I am.
How would you describe what you think you're like as a father?
I think I'm a good father. I think I'm fair and sometimes a little scary. And
how are you scary?
Well, I think you need to be able to have the voice that stops a child in its tracks. You know, like if you have a kid that's running out into the street, you hope that you've established in them something that says, "Oh, that's the voice. I better just stop." There it is. There are consequences to that might be not good. Also, somebody has to, you know, administer justice in the household. There has to be a hierarchy and an understanding, and you try to be good to your kids and explain things. But there are some things that you just need to point to and say, "Look, this is a bad idea," and you know, and to take my word for it. That goes pretty well.
How do you think your upbringing impacted you as a father?
Well, like I said, I had no examples of fatherhood, except I did have Gordon to a point, you know, and so up to there I was pretty good, you know, telling the truth, try to be decent to all people. Those are good things, to be respectful of all people, and to be a gentleman, you know, I mean, as a man, and be a young lady. I mean, I think those are still terms that can be applied in our society, and an expectation of good behavior. Whether, you know, it's like how to be decent to people. You just, you know, allow everybody their space, and as Emerson said, you know, say their name with all the honors any king or queen would ever be given. You know, to be respectful of people, and to find them. I find all people fascinating and interesting and deserving of that kind of attention. And then, you know, there are certain corners you shouldn't stop on. There are certain people that will prove to you that, you know, you've gotten as much from them as you can in a short span of time, and you do not need to stay there.
You mentioned your first child now in her 30s.
Right.
How do you think you've evolved as a dad from when you first had a kid?
It's funny. I think I was
today?
a pretty good dad to her. I mean, just, you know, she was the first that Spencer, my daughter Spencer. She was the first one, right? So I guess I cut my teeth on her a little bit. But I was always I was with her all the time when she was younger. when I had my second wife, we spent a little more time apart, and I'm not sure that was helpful. You come back around. You have enough time, you get to restore all the sense of love and intimacy that can be there between a father and a daughter, especially, and I think that's all there now. We had some tough times.
May 31st, 2008, the heart attack.
Right.
Take me through what happened from the moment you first started feeling bad.
Well, this is a kind of an athletic story. I was to stand-up paddling that day. We did a couple of miles. Went down to a little beach just south of where there was a home that I owned, and they did this thing as well. You go pick up a big rock off the bottom of the seafloor and walk with it for a while underwater, hold your breath. So I did that about 5 or 6 times, and then we got back on the boards and paddled back up, and that's when I felt a little dizzy and stepped onto the beach and thought, oh, I'd better just sit down. Then I threw up, and thought, that's a little funny. And I said, well, let's go and get some food. So that's when I stood up, and that's when I felt the crushing pressure in my chest. And
what are you thinking at the time?
Well, I started thinking, I guess maybe that's a heart attack. And so I sat down, I tried to breathe deeply, and it felt really, really painful. And at that point, that's when I started to shout apologies to my ex-wife about how sorry I was that I'd, sort of just been this awful husband. But that's kind of what she, made me believe. I waited for an hour and a half before the emergency guys got there. It was too bad because it's Hawaii, the big island of Hawaii, and getting an ambulance there is tough. I think maybe they've gotten a helicopter by now for such situations. But so a lot of, some damage was done to my heart during that time. Finally, they gave me when I finally got to the emergency room, they gave me what they call the clot buster. And that was one of the interesting experiences. They said, well, you've got some sort of clot, something's obstructing the flow of blood through your heart, and they said there are side effects. I said, what it does? And she said, well, death. That's okay, thank you. Go, do it. And so they did it, and then they pop you, and they bring you back. And so I was breathing on my own after the second pop, and everything sort of back on track.
When was the point in which you weren't present anymore?
It was very brief. There was a brief moment of when I said just before the shot, I sort of said to the gods that be or whatever, the lesser angels, whatever. I said, don't show me anything. I don't want to see a thing. I'm not interested in any tunnels or any light. I have things I have to do here still. And I'll digress for a second. I'd gotten to the point in my marriage at that time. The unhappiness was so profound that I actually started to think the only way I can solve this for them is to not be here.
Really?
Yeah, and so I started to believe that the best course for my life was to not be alive, and that they'd be happier.
Why would you feel that?
Just, look, some people get you to a certain place. That's all I'll say about it. So in that moment when I said, okay, I take it all back, is what I was basically saying to the little angels. I was saying, I didn't really mean it. You know what? I know there's something else to live for, and I want to get to that.
But it wasn't until that moment that you really had that revelation.
Made it a profound plea for another shot at this. Yeah, right. And I guess they heard me.
How much damage ended up getting done to your heart?
Well, you know what? I think I've reversed a lot of it by now because I've been working out pretty hard ever since then, and I've done some things that enhance your blood flow. And I feel pretty strong.
Post Frasier, we were taping an episode with John Hamm not too long ago of Mad Men fame, and I asked him, how do you recapture the high of being TV's leading man? And he laughed and he's like, you don't.
No,
How similar an experience was that transition for you?
Yeah. Well, Frasier was a giant accomplishment. honestly. Actors get wary about, successful characters because then they kind of like take away your right to play other ones. But that hasn't been the case with me. I mean, there's a bit of a, he's still sort of there in my life always, Frasier. I mean, because he's a great character. So I'm remembered for him. But recently I've been playing a lot of different roles and I'm having a really great time at it. And that's what I always wanted to be, was just an actor that played different characters. So that's happened. And I got a couple of indelible ones. Another indelible character was Boss, basically, Tom Kane.
Sure.
That went really well. And although it didn't, have the full life that I'd hoped it would, it was a very successful performance for me. And there's some other ones coming up. I've done a couple of films lately that I think are going to be pretty good experiences for people in the theater, and so I'm happy.
How did the level of satisfaction that you got from the roles and parts post-Frasier compared to maybe what you would have been expecting?
Right. Frasier was so good. It was a great performance and great writing and all the things you needed to have it become great. I've experienced that since, and so I haven't been cursed by it, in a weird way. I'm trying to get to the heart of your question.
And I was going to say I wasn't implying or asking that in a negative way by any means. I guess I just wonder. You go from playing for one part for so long.
Right.
I guess there's some level of preconceived notion of what it's like to then all of a sudden have the flexibility to play all of these different roles.
Yeah, that's true.
Does the satisfaction kind of compare to what
Right.
you would have
the
been
satisfaction
expecting
is
going
the same.
into it?
Yeah, the satisfaction is great. It's been great. It's just like when the first time you do it. The very first time I did a role where I went, wow, that felt like truth. Because, and that's what we get off on, I think. It's like you get to sort of touch human truth through a performance. Somebody said it describes great art as a true lie. It's a very simple set of words, a true lie. That's exactly what it is. I mean, we're not telling the truth, but we are conveying truth. With a mask, and it's a great way to make a living.
The Simpsons, the voice of Sideshow.
Well, there's a great truth in Sideshow Bob.
What does that entail?
Sideshow Bob is a character based upon a person I knew. His name was Ellis Rabb, and I've said this before in many instances, but. Ellis was a colorful, flamboyant man that I knew that I did some work for years before, and he would say the most wonderful things. Oh, Kelsey, things like that. Today I am, and I thought, God, this guy, I got to use him somewhere. And the occasion arose with Sideshow Bob. So Sideshow Bob is Ellis Rabb, my version of Ellis Rabb, and an honorific version. I mean, I loved him. I thought he was a wonderful guy, and. The most famous thing he ever said to me, and I've told this story before, was, he said, Kelsey, that baby should have been mine. And I've always thought, wow, that is the greatest thing. So years later, I was auditioning girls or young women for The Daughter and Boss, and a girl came and sat and was reading for us, and she looked up and said, I am that baby. That was wonderful. So,
how did The Simpsons come about?
Sam Simon had been a writer on Cheers, and he took off and started doing the Tracy Ullman Show, and then within that they came up with Matt Groening, the little itchy and scratchy thing, and then it turned into the sort of the Simpsons character, the Bart and everything. And he called me like in the second season of The Simpsons and said, I used to sing a lot on the set of Cheers. I used to always sing, "Oh, the good life," and he asked me if I was still doing that, and I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Can you sing a Cole Porter song?" And I said, "Of course I can." And so I said, "Well, we've got this character, Sideshow Bob, who loves Cole Porter, who has never spoken a word, and." We finally thought he should speak. He's Krusty the Clown's sidekick, and we want you to do it. So I said, yeah, I'll come in. And that's when I thought, oh, it's Ellis, and did my Ellis Rab impression, and then sang, what is it? Every time we say goodbye, I cry a little. Every time we say goodbye, I wonder why a little. A wonderful song, and Sideshow was born.
You have a best memory from there over the years?
Well, you know what? They always come up with really quirky, wonderful stuff to get to do. I mean, I just did another one in London when I was doing Man of La Mancha on an afternoon for a Christmas show. I don't know if it'd be this Christmas or next Christmas. You never know. They used to be almost a year ahead in terms of what you'd record and what you'd finally see on the air. I'm guessing that window is, closed considerably or, reduced considerably. But so the time in turning it over is maybe reduced, so it might be this Christmas. But and it was funny. I think of funny things. The last one, when he was working for Monsanto, I thought that was really funny. He's sort of doing like GMO, It's they're a funny bunch.
The Frasier reboot.
Yes.
The new Frasier.
The new Frasier.
What's the plan for that?
Well, we're in the midst of talking about. We've got it hatched. We've hatched the plan, what we think is the right way to go. We're sort of on standby a little bit, working out on a couple of possible network deals that we're circling.
Okay.
And Frasier is sort of in a second position to that at this point. So, there's still stuff going on. But a revisit to Frasier and Frasier's world is I think, definitely going to come. We'll see, how people respond to it, because it's not going to be the same place. It's not going to be Seattle. It's not going to be the same Frasier. It's going to be, the man in his next iteration. And hopefully that'll be something people like watching. But I think it'll be funny.
Without revealing too many details, what will it be about?
Well, it's still his search for love, for one thing. I think that'll always go on with Frasier. But a connection with his son.
When do you think it starts?
Spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
When do you think
the airtime?
People can...
Probably late summer next year.
Late summer next year.
I would guess.
That's quick.
Yeah, I mean, it's ready to go. We just got to sort of staff it and find somebody who wants to give us money for it.
I mean, that's probably not that difficult.
Who knows? You never know. I mean, the business is funny. It's a funny world. But I think there's a couple of outlets that would actually be interested in revisiting it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You initially said you could not see yourself playing Frasier again.
Right.
What changed?
Well, part of it was the Roseanne revival, things that kind of like kicked again, and then when they were doing things like when Murphy Brown came back, and I don't know how, and when Will and Grace came back, I thought, well, maybe it'd be worth it. I've always wanted to be honest. I didn't think Frasier should be in exactly the same place as he was 12 years ago. So we've changed that.
What was appealing to you about it?
Just the idea that there might be another act in his life, because certainly his life is. I mean, people used to ask, could you have done it for more time? And they say, well, yeah. I mean, because life is always surprising. People go on. Yeah. You get up the next day and it's a different life, isn't it? And so I thought you could always tell stories about that. We just ended it because that's where, contracts were up and 11 seasons seemed like the right kind of amount of time for it to be on the air. And so we ended it on a high and what we thought was a good story point to end on and a hopeful stepping off place. All those things were enough to propel him into a new kind of life. And so this new idea would be based upon the fact that he was still, alive and still trying things and still embarked on an adventure. I think that ideally that would be how it would work out.
On that note, I really appreciate you having us here. This has been a treat. Sorry for all the questions, but thank you for being so open with your story. This has been great.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.